Hello YouTube friends, I'm Beth and this is my YouTube channel, Red Cross Stitcher. I can also be found on Instagram as Red Cross Stitcher as well. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Today's video is a tutorial. We're going to be doing a quilted tote bag. But before we get started, let me just say, if you like my content, would you please subscribe to my channel? Like and share my video and do all the things we do here on YouTube. I would appreciate it. Also, if you would leave me a comment below letting me know what other types of tutorials you would be interested in seeing, I would appreciate that as well. If you're new to my channel, I don't edit my videos. So this video, you're not going to be able to see up close what I'm sewing. However, I will hold it up to the camera every piece that I'm doing so you can see that. I also give my instructions as if I am speaking to a new sewist. So if you are an advanced or an intermediate sewist, just know that I am giving my instructions and maybe repeating myself as if it is a beginner sewist. So let's just go ahead and get started. So pull up a chair here in my studio and let's get started. We are going to be making a tote bag. This is quilted and bound like you would a quilt, except there are no corners to go through. So let me hold it up and show you. I used cotton webbing straps, and I typically do that for my bags. However, you can use fabric if you choose, nylon straps, whatever that you want to do. But this is quilted, got a nice gusset on it. So we are going to be making this today. It is bound at the top and on the sides. So let's just go ahead and get started. I am going to list out the supplies that you'll need in the cutting instructions in the description box below. I'll also give them to you as I'm speaking. This is the large tote bag. Today we'll be making the medium, so we're just going to be cutting it down by 1 square on each row, but this is what we'll be making. All right, let's get started. I'm gonna pull my chair up. I will tip you down so you can see what I'm doing. And then I will give you the supplies. Let me tip you down. And instructions for everything that you're going to need. Again, I will list that below. First and foremost, you'll need a sewing machine, thread, needles, that sort of thing. Today, I am sewing on Pearl. Pearl is my Bernina 770. So I'll be sewing with Pearl today. Besides your machine, you will need a self-healing mat, a rotary cutter of your choice. I would suggest if you have a 60-inch, this happens to be a Martelli rotary cutter, ergonomic. These are nice. But if you have a 60mm, use that if you are going to be using soft and stable. That's what I used. Let me pull it back up. That's what I used in this bag. It gives that bag structure so it can stand, and it makes, I think, makes for a very nice bag. So if you're going to use the soft and stable, because it is thick and as you cut, you may want a 60mm rotary cutter. So let me move that out of the way. You're going to need a pair of scissors, some sort of marking tool. I am using a friction pen, but I will caution you, as I have in another tutorial, when you use friction pens, and depending on what fabric you use, that line could come back. So you may want to use a water soluble or one of the air erasing markers. You will also potentially need some basting spray. I am using, I used 505 basting spray. You're going to need clips if you have clips. And I got this cute little tin of clips from, I believe off Amazon. They are the smaller ones. I do have some Wonder clips mixed in here with it. Clips, definitely pins if you don't have clips. You are going to need a ruler as well. And I think that's about all you will need. So let's just go ahead and let me give you the instructions and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, let me move all my stuff out of the way. So I'm going to give you both sizes, even though we're going to be making the medium size today. So for the medium size, you are going to need 24 5-inch squares. And if you're going to do the large one like I showed you, you're going to need 30. They are both going to have 3 rows. The medium will have 4 squares across. The large will have 5 squares across. So do not spend a lot of time laying it out. Like I've told you in the past, you can overthink this. You may not just want the same pattern touching, but for the medium today, I'm doing 3 rows of 4. So I've got 1 piece laid out. You're going to need to piece 2 of these. So that's why you need 24. 12 on one patchwork, 12 on the other. So go ahead, sew these together. You can chain piece these, and I told you before to chain piece, you would pick up the first 2 in the row, sew a 1/4 inch seam, don't cut your thread, pick up the next 2, sew, don't cut your thread, pick up the next one and sew, then cut your thread at the end. And then when you come to pick up the next one for each row, everything is attached by your thread where you're not cutting it. So you would sew all of those, cut it at the end, and then come and pick up the 4th one. For it not being, since they're larger squares, I would just sew them in rows. So sew this row, and that row. Press opposite directions. So it doesn't matter if the top's going to the left or right, the next one, the middle row, will need to go opposite, and the same for the last row. So go ahead and do that. Press opposite the seams in the opposite directions for the rows, and then attach the rows together. You need to make 2 of these. So you're going to make 2 of these. You also, and I'm going to sit this here while I'm talking, you are also going to need some bottom fabric. And I am using a canvas. I think a canvas or a decorator weight fabric works better for bags. I will caution you to maybe take your bag bottom fabric a little darker. You wouldn't want a white fabric, because this bag is typically going to be set on the ground, and therefore, you know, it would just save it from looking so nasty. So I am using a canvas. So you are going to need a piece that is 18 by 20. You are also going to need some lining fabric. You are going to need a piece of lining fabric that is 18 by 47. Let me go ahead and give you the large one. The bottom fabric for the large is 23 by 20. The lining fabric would be 23 by 47. But for the medium, we're doing 18.5 by 47 for the lining. You are also going to need some sort of interfacing. I am using the Soft and Stable. And if I hold that up, you can see how thick that is. It is a great product. It's soft and it allows for structure. This probably would almost stand up on its own. It just gives bags such a nice, pretty shape. So I used Soft and Stable. I know Pellon makes a brand, Bozell makes the brand. They also make them single-sided and double-sided fusible if you want. Mine was not. That is why I said you may want some basting spray. So mine was not. I used basting spray for mine. You will also need binding strips. For the medium, you need 3 2.5 inch width of fabric pieces of fabric. You need 3 for the medium. You need 4 for the larger. And on the larger bag, you need to take 2 of those strips and join those together to make one continuous binding. So you would take them right sides together, line up that short edge, sew, and press open that seam, and then press to make the binding. For the medium bag, 1 strip will get the binding all the way across. Now, I have already pressed mine, so you can see the fold, and I took it wrong sides, lengthwise, put that together to match the raw edges up, and gave it a press all the way down. I've already done all 3 of my strips that way. You are also going to need straps. Now, like I said, you don't have to use cotton webbing. That's what I am using. You can use fabric. And if I was going to use fabric, I would put batting on the inside of that strip that I made. I would probably cut my strip at 3.5 inches, maybe even 4 inches, depending on how wide that you want it. And typically what I do is press it like you would binding, and you can fold up the long edge on the side that does not have the fold 1/4 inch on both sides. Insert your batting in there, and then sew down to close that up, and that way it's finished on that edge as well. That's one way. You can make a tube, turn it, sew those right sides together, then turn that out. I typically wouldn't make my strap that way, but you could. But again, I'm using cotton webbing. You'll need 2. I am using, mine are probably about 32 inches long. I would say anywhere from 30 to 32 inches if you want to be able to put it up on your shoulder. If not, then make the straps as long as you want. And I'll preface this to say, I'm a cross stitcher as well as a quilter, but I made this bag out of necessity. I needed a bag that I could carry to my weekly stitch meetings, where I could put, I have it's a pillow form actually, that holds my chart, and I can poke my needles in it, and it's a large, pretty good sized pillow form, and I wanted to be able to put that in a bag and carry that. This bag does not have a zipper. We can definitely make a bag later that has a zipper, but this one does not. I wanted this bag open. And I also have a metal board that I use as well, and I wanted to be able to carry that. So again, this bag was created out of necessity for me, so I thought I would just share with you what I did, and then I modified it a little bit to make one that wasn't quite as large as the one I showed you. So make your straps to the length that you want. So one other thing, let me tell you. If you want a pocket, you could take a piece of fabric, a 10 by 12 inch piece of fabric, and fold that right sides together, sew around the 3 sides, leaving about a 2 inch opening, and sew that, pull it through, give it a good press, and you can attach that to the lining prior to assembling the bag. Today, I did not create a pocket for this, but you definitely can. Again, customize this to yourself. If you don't like piecing, get you a pretty fat quarter for each side and make your bag out of fabric or some yardage. You don't have to do the pieced, this pieced bag. I'm a quilter, so I like the pieced. So I've already pieced mine and attached mine to the bottom of my fabric. So let me move some of this out of the way so I can show you. So here is the pieced patchwork. Orient yourself even as you lay out your squares. I have some directional fabric here. If you have directional fabric, when you lay that out, make sure you know what is the top portion of your pieced patchwork and then what is the bottom. Because once you sew this together, again, we're doing 2 because we need 1 for each side. 3 rows of 4 for the medium. This is the larger bag, so you'll see 3 rows of 5. But you are going to attach it right side of the pieced patchwork to the right side of that bottom fabric. So you would lay this down. That's why I said make sure you're attaching the bottom, not the top. You will lay it right sides together on your bottom fabric like that, and then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch away. Once you have sewn that, you are going to press the seam to the bottom of the fabric like that. Now you are going to take your other pieced patchwork, again making sure you know which is the top and which is the bottom, and now you are going to lay the patchwork again right sides together, the bottom of the patchwork right sides to the right side of the bottom of the fabric, again just like that. You're going to sew a 1/4 inch away. Let me get up so you can see. And then press that seam to the bottom of the bag. Now, when I talk about nesting, when you press your rows, you can see mine are offset. So when you go to attach that row together, that will nest really pretty to give you a really pretty seam that lines up. Okay, so we have the patchwork sewn together, and then we've attached each patchwork piece, making sure we attach the bottom of that patchwork piece to the bottom fabric, right sides together. And all this is sewn with a 1/4 inch seam. So this is what you should have. One big piece, what is your outer bag. Now we don't have a bottom seam. That's why our lining needed to be 18.5 by 47. But this is where you should be. When you press, after you have attached your rows to your patchwork, and you're going to give it a good press before you attach it to the bottom, it doesn't matter whether you press all those seams up or down. At that point, there's nothing that you're matching it to. But when you attach it to the bottom fabric, just press toward the bottom. Okay, from this point, we are going to take your fusible fleece, your soft and stable, your quilt batting, whatever you have. I, again, used the soft and stable. Mine was not fusible. If you were using fusible interfacing of any kind, make sure that you are attaching the bumpy side, if there is, to the back side of the outer bag. If it is double-sided, when you lay this down, make sure your lining then, that you're putting your lining piece down and then adhering it to whatever your manufacturer's instructions say. If you don't, and it is fusible and you didn't use it, or you put it on wrong, incorrectly, it can junk up your iron and ruin your ironing board cover. So just make sure you know if yours is fusible or not, and then again, if is it double-sided or single-sided fusible. So for me, I used the 505 spray. So after I laid my outer bag that's put together down, I then took my soft and stable, laid it down. Your lining fabric and your interfacing, whatever you're using, can be cut larger than that 18.5 by 47 because we are going to trim this. You could, cut it 19 by 48 if you wanted to, because when you quilt anything, whether it's with fusible fleece quilt batting or the soft and stable, it shrinks that product, and you will need to do a little trimming on it. So you can cut those larger if you choose to do so. But I laid mine down, sprayed my 505 spray, adhered my soft and stable all the way down, making, you just got to make sure that it is smooth. And then I took my lining fabric, laid it over top of the soft and stable, sprayed a little basting spray, and just pressed it out. I actually even take it to the ironing board and give it a press. You do not want it to be puckered like that. You want to make sure that is pulled nice and tight, and that it is really pretty and smooth. Because this is a larger bag, you may want to put some pins in it if it is not fusible, because we have to roll this, put it up under the machine, and it could move on you. So just be cognizant of that. So now we have our bag outer quilt sandwich. So we've got our interfacing, whatever we're using, in the middle, and we have the lining fabric on the back as well. If you are adding your pocket and you choose to add one, before you add your lining and adhere the 3 layers together, go ahead and apply your pocket then. You will only stitch, when I told you to stitch around the 3 sides, leaving a 2-inch opening. Pull your pocket through, give that a press where that opening was turned. If you want to do a top stitch on the top, which I typically do just to make it look pretty, you can do that. And then figure out where you want your pocket and place that on your lining, and you are going to sew about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and making sure that the opening that you use to turn it is on the bottom, because we're not going to then sew the top to the lining. If we're going to do a top stitch, you're going to do that before you add it to the bag, or on the lining. Once it's on the lining, 1/8 of an inch down, and when you come across the bottom, it will catch that opening. Just finger press that into place or iron it, and then you're going to come back up the other side 1/8 of an inch. Typically, I will split my pocket. I'll have one pocket a little bigger for my phone, something of that nature, and the other side can be for readers or a pen, marker, some sort of your tool that you have. So you can go ahead and run a stitch down if you choose to split the pocket. But that's the time you want to do it, before you add it to the actual the bag, put it together, the sandwich it together. So now where you should be is you should have your lining sandwiched with your top, whatever interfacing you're using, and the outer bag together. go ahead and quilt. Now, if you're using fusible fleece, you do not have to quilt it because that is a permanent adhesive. I am a quilter, so I enjoy the quilting, and because it's patchwork, I like to stitch a 1/4 inch away from the seam. So that's how I quilted mine. But let me tell you where I would start quilting. So again, we have this long piece, 18.5 by 47, and it's flat. I would start quilting here in the middle. And here's the chance to use some of those pretty stitches you have. I just use a serpentine stitch on mine, making sure that I probably started on one side and I went over each. I marked it, I think about 1.5 inches away, and stitched. Don't hop around, even when you're doing patchwork quilting. It allows for more opportunity for there to be puckering. So go in a row and continue on, so as you're smoothing as you're going. Then when you come to the patchwork, what I typically do is start here. I will go all the way down to the bottom of it, come back up, and then turn it again, go back down. Again, this is where you're having to roll it to put it up under your machine. This is the most fiddly part of this, is because it's large. And if you are using soft and stable, it's a little more, it's a little thicker than it would be with just interfacing. After I've quilted that, then I come across horizontally, do the same thing. I would do the top, the bottom, the top of this one, and the bottom of this one, and then down here. That's how I quilt. Even if you're using fusible fleece or quilt batting, I would increase my stitch length to 3.0 to quilt this. So after it's quilted, and you've already attached your pocket prior to quilting if you wanted to do that, but after it's quilted, we are now going to put it wrong sides together. Well, even before that, after you've got it quilted, go ahead and trim it. Again, quilting shrinks that, so get it nice and level on the top and all the sides. Trim it up so you've got a pretty product. After it's trimmed, then fold it with the lining sides together, and the pretty patchwork is on the outer. And we are going to increase our stitch length to whatever your highest is. My Bernina goes to 6, whatever yours is. And then you are going to use that and baste just about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, just to adhere that for when we do binding, it won't shift. You are going to do that on both sides, 1/8 of an inch away with a basting stitch, whatever your longest basting stitch is. After we have done that, now we are going to put a pretty gusset on our bag. So you will need your ruler. If you have a square ruler, that's great, use it. I don't, well, I do, but I don't have it in front of me. So I am going to use my regular ruler. And now that it is folded, again, lining together, pretty sides out, we are going to mark the corners at 3 inches. So we're going to come in, mark over and down 3 inches, and whatever you, when you box a corner, whatever you are doing, it doubles it, because if I mark a 3-inch corner, it's actually 6, because it's 3 on this side and 3 on the other side. But I'm going to do a 3-inch, and I will show you what I did. This is where I used my marking tool, but again, be careful when you use these friction pins, because the line could come back and you could have a problem with that. So just come in with your ruler, match up your edges, the edge of the bottom of the bag and the side. So here and here, you would match up to 3 inches. And once you have that lined up, again, the bottom and the side, then take your whatever tool you want to use and draw a line and mark that. You're only going to mark 2 on both sides. So I've already done mine. Here's the one, and there is the other side. You don't have to do it on both. So now I have both of each side marked, and now we're going to cut it. You can use a rotary cutter here if you choose. I don't like to rotary cut that because this is pretty thick, and if you go up because you're having to use more pressure, you're going to cut through that bag. So I'm going to use scissors, and I'll start one way, go to the corner, and come at it from the opposite way and cut that out. And you're going to cut both of those out. So let's do that. Again, I'm just using a pair of scissors to do this. So I am coming in on my line, and you want this as straight as possible so your gusset is even. So, and you got to be careful with scissors too, just to make sure you're not cutting beyond where you should. That's where I think it works really well if you come in from start at one side and then come up the other way. Because it's thick if you're using this soft and stable. Because in essence, you are cutting through 2 pieces of your foam and then your outer 2 pieces and your inside lining 2 pieces. So that's what you're cutting off. And you'll repeat that to your other side. Again, just watching when you come to that corner that you don't cut through the bag here. So I have cut both sides. And there's the piece that I cut off. So that can be discarded. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to take our side that we have basted, and we are going to add a strip of our binding. Again, you should fold your binding strips in half lengthwise, wrong sides together, and press that. You have more than enough when you do both sides. I didn't even trim off my selvage. So we're going to take that, line it up. This is where you can use some of your clips. And you are going to, I'll stand up so you can see. You are going to line this up like you would a quilt. And you're lining the raw edge of that binding up with the raw edge of the bag. Just like that. So here's the fold and this is the raw edge. You're going to line that up, clip it if you need to, and we're going to stitch that at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, before you sew that, this top does not need to match the top because we have plenty. Like I said, we'll be able to trim this off. So don't worry about trying to get that even. And go ahead, because this is where it was good to baste. Oh, and let me show you these on the Wonder clips. If you notice, one side is flat, and I don't know if you can see it from that angle. One side is curved. The flat piece rides better if that is clipped on the bottom of whatever you are attaching. So when it rides under the sewing machine, that flat piece rides well. So I am just matching up the raw edge to the raw edge of my bag. Again, my sides are basted, but even though they're basted, just make sure on the back that nothing is flipped or turned that shouldn't be, okay? So I have it lined up, I've got it clipped, and now we're going to stitch 1/4 inch away. This will be stitched at a 2.50 stitch length. Excuse me, I needed a drink of water. Okay, so we're just going to start this. I'm going to sew and then I'll show it to you when I am done. I do back stitch at the beginning and at the end. I do have a 1/4 inch foot on my machine. If you have a walking foot, when you quilted this, I told you to increase your stitch length to about 3.0. If you have a walking foot, that would have been the best time to put that on to quilt this with. You can also leave it on to finish the construction of your bag. I do not have a walking foot for this machine. It's there is a built-in walking foot with it. I know there is a separate one that can come with this, but I don't have that. So I will stitch 1/4 inch away. It's thick. You may have to help get it going. And this is what I'm saying. You're moving it, turning it, folding it to get it up under, because again, it's thick here. That's why you wanted that attached really good. And I am just going to continue sewing. And I continue to adjust. I'm not worried about it down here. I'm only worried about the piece that I am sewing to keeping it aligned. I backstitched at the end, and now you are just going to trim up that raw edge. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, just trim it to the bottom of that corner. And like I said, you have plenty left over. And then I'm trimming the top as well. Okay, throwing that in the trash. This can be saved. And I'll give you an option for your boxed corners. Because we're binding this like a quilt, you're not going to have your side seams exposed, but the boxed corner will be. You can take your remainder strip and use that. I am not going to do that today. The only difference is you would need to fold down about 1/4 of an inch. So that way you have a pretty edge on both sides, because that will be visible. This is getting covered when we put the binding on the top, and then of course it's getting the corners sewn. So that would be the difference. Now I have attached and sewn the raw edge 1/4 inch away. And I showed you this before. When you flip this, when I do a quilt and I bind a quilt, I like to attach my binding to the front of the quilt, and then I pull the binding to the back of the quilt, but I sew it from the front and I stitch right there in that ditch. And if you, on the back side, if you see your stitch line and you cover it with the binding about 1/8 of an inch over that stitch line, when you sew it in the ditch, it will catch it on that side. And that's what I'm going to do. You could press this before you do this step. So I am just going to fold it, covering my stitch line. Again, about 1/8 of an inch. This is why I wouldn't do a 2 1/4 inch binding strip, just because of the soft and stable. You could probably get away with a 2 1/4 on fusible fleece, but I did a 2 1/2 inch strips. So now I have pulled it to this side, I have clipped it, but I am going to sew it from this side where I originally attached it, and I am going to stitch right there in that ditch. So I'm going to do that. I will also do this at a 2.50 stitch length, and I'm just putting my needle right there in the ditch of this. Again, you may have to help get it started when you first put it under your machine, because it is thick. And again, you're going to have to move it up out of the way. I will back stitch at the beginning and end as well. All right. Now, if you didn't catch your binding, you can always go back and catch it again. Okay. So we can now do whatever we do on one side, we have to do on the other side. So you're going to take your second strip and do the same thing. And I am actually, that's a little close for me. I'm going to And you can wait till the end to clip all of your threads if you want. Because once you quilt it, you will have, because you're quilting your lining to it, you will need to trim all your threads on the inside as well. So now we're going to do this to this side, doing the same exact thing. I'm not worrying about matching it up at the beginning and the end, just the edge. I'm going to line the raw edge of the binding up to the raw edge of the bag and clip. And again, if you're clipping or pinning, making sure that you're not flipping one side, the back side, on top of itself or anything like that. So I have it clipped again. The raw edge of the binding is at the raw edge of the bag, 1/4 inch away. Don't worry about this. We'll trim that off at the top and the bottom. I backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, I have attached it. Now I'm just trimming this off to the edge of that corner where we created. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. Just giving it a trim. And then I'm going to do the same thing, trimming the top. Now, you can press this again. We're going to now fold this lining or the binding to the back side. Again, you can just fold it over. And if you want to stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, do that. But again, I'm going to fold it over, covering that stitch line that where I attach the binding about 1/8 of an inch over. I'll clip that, and then I will sew it where on the side I originally sewed the binding. I just like that look better. Even if you have to go back and because you missed a little bit of it, that is my preferred method. So I am just clipping. All right, I have it clipped, 1/4 of an inch, or I'm stitching in the ditch. If you're stitching it from the opposite side, just stitch about 1/8 of an inch away. And you will have to finagle your bag. If you are sewing it the way that I sew it, just make sure that you keep rolling that to the back with your thumb as you remove the clips, just to make sure it hasn't shifted on you. But if it does, just go back and recatch it. Not a big deal. And I caught it. Let's see. So I stitch it from this side, and if it gets too close, I just re-stitch it. Like if you don't like, if it's too close to the edge and you want to give yourself a little more room on it, just go back in and re-stitch it. And I have my contacts in, so I cannot see as good. And I still don't like that, y'all. All right. Let's see if that worked. Third time's a charm, yeah. Okay. Trim up my edges, and so there you have it stitched. So my binding has been attached to both sides. We've already boxed our corners, so now you're going to flip your bag wrong sides out. So just go in and pull it, and I probably shouldn't have worn a black top. I'm going to be covered in fuzz. But turn it wrong side out. Now, I told you that you could, so you see, this is our side of the bag, and the seam is hidden because we bound it. So you have a couple of options here. You can use, like I told you, that remainder of your binding strip and attach it to your corner. I am not doing that today. I am just going to sew it. So here is the side of my bag, and all I'm doing is closing this together. Do you see that? So this is what it looked like where we cut it. We're going to the side. Here's my side seam, okay? And we're just folding this, squishing it down, just like that. So you're gonna match up your raw edges. Now again, if you wanna take that binding and bind that, you can absolutely do that. You just have to fold in the edges because this isn't getting caught in another seam. You can definitely do that. I am just choosing to sew a 1/4 inch and zigzag it or serge it. But you just want to make sure your raw edges are matching, and then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch away. And we're going to do that to both sides. Back stitching at the beginning and the end. And just making sure that's good and flat. Boy, I have that fuzz all over me. All right, 1/4 inch away. Again, I'm gonna just double stitch mine just to make sure, because again, that's the bottom of your bag. I just want to make sure this is nice and tight. If you want, you could come in a 1/2 inch, but I think 1/4 of an inch is plenty. All right, we're going to repeat that on the other side. So again, we're going to take that where we have the side seam and flatten this out and bring these two pieces together. So again, the side of our bag, so you'll have that opening, just flatten that out, and you can take your fingers if you want and pull it so that way you're matching your raw edges up, and now we're stitching 1/4 inch away. And I will probably just double stitch this one as well. So I have both of these stitched. They're completely stitched 1/4 inch away. I double stitched mine. You can trim your threads. I will go back and zigzag stitch mine, or like I said, use the serger. I'm not going to do that right now because I have to change my foot on my machine out, but I will do that. All right, now we're getting close. Turn your bag right side out. So go back in and just turn it out. And poke out your corners. If when you turn your bag, there is an opening, you didn't catch maybe part of your outer, go back in and re-stitch it. But you should have now a pretty gusset on either side. Looky there, we're almost finished with our bag. So what you're going to do now is take your straps, and on the medium-sized bag, you can situate those between the first and second block and the third and fourth block. That's about a good even place to put that on both sides. When you do your straps, when you straighten your strap out and it's not twisted, it's not twisted, it's straight, just turn it up. So I have it all straight, no twist, and I'm just letting it fold down, and now this is even. I'm going to clip them in place. Again, lining up that strap in the center of the first and second block and the third and fourth block. Like that. If you don't know if it's correct, pull it up and see. You shouldn't have any twists. Now, we can tack this down so it doesn't shift on us. And you're going to do this to the opposite side as well. And again, we're only attaching it to the one side. Don't tack your bag closed. And you will do the same exact thing to the other side. So I opened the bag up, I only attached it to one side. Now you can attach it again here and tack it. Strap is straight, no twist, and bend up, and I will just clip that again in the middle of 1 and 2 block, and then between 3 and 4. And I'm just running a little tacking stitch at the very edge, about 1/8 of an inch away, making sure you move everything out of the way and you're not sewing the top of your bag closed. We're almost done. Then we will put the binding on the top and we will be done. Yeah, this obviously I cannot wear a black shirt. All right, my straps are tacked on. Now, the last thing that we're going to do is take the binding, our last binding strip, and we're going to, again, I've already got mine folded and pressed, attach the raw edge, match up that raw edge to the raw edge of the bag, and I'm going to go ahead and trim my selvage. You don't have to, because we are going to put it together. But let me show you. So take the raw edge of your binding, and now you're going to attach it only, again, when we're sewing it, we're only sewing it at one side all the way around. Don't sew your bag together. So you can clip that if you want, but we're matching up the raw edges. You want to leave yourself a tail of about 6 inches so we can join it going around. But I'm going to now attach mine going all the way around the bag, making sure my bag is separate from the front and the back and not sewing it together. Raw edge to raw edge, and leave about a 4-inch or so on, 4 to 6 inch on either side. If you have a free arm that can be removed from your sewing machine, that works the best. And actually, I'm going to raise mine up. My machine sits in a cabinet, but I'm going to raise mine up. I'm going to take my insert out because it does make a big difference. And I'm going to raise my machine up. So yours may have a, where you can expose your free arm here to do it. It works so much better, so your bag can actually slide on. Again, we're only doing the one side. I'm leaving a about a 4 to 6 inch opening before I tack, and then I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch. Now, when you come to the edge of the bag, and I would back stitch at the beginning and the end, when you look at your boxed corner, whatever way that your binding was sewn in that box, sew your push your binding that way as you're bringing around your top binding on it. It would just look better if you do that. All right. And again, I'm just matching my raw edges up. And I just keep pushing my bag under as I go. And you want to get your straps out of the way. Don't, just be careful, push everything out of the way. Because we're only, again, sewing on the one side. We've got it opened so we're not closing our bag shut. And I'm back stitching where I'm going to stop. So now we have the binding strip added to the very top of our bag. Now we've left a gap here so we can attach the binding strips together. You can do that on the miter, or you can just attach them straight edge, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to open the one up without twisting it. Open this other side up without twisting it. You would match it up, and then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch away. But to get this to where it fits nicely, I've told you anytime on that project bag we did, whatever width that your binding is cut, not length, but the width. If you lay your straps or the binding down, I'm going to actually trim this just a little so I can maybe show you better. As it is laid flat, if you lay your other strip on top of it, you should be able just to cut a little piece of your binding open. Again, you're only looking for the width, not the length. And if you lay that where your piece started, let me see if I can show you. So underneath is my one binding strip. If you line the edge of this piece up with that, which is about right there, then you can cut the one that overlaps it by that much. That's one method. The other method, so if you end up doing this, again, just don't, if you're trimming off a piece, don't do length, just do width. And you could lay that and lay it down and then cut it. The other option you have is just open it up without twisting, like I said before. And this is what I tell beginners, and then you can cave in your bag to get it to meet. Open it up. You get a feel for it as you do this, what is correct. But as a new sewist, I would say open your binding strip up, aligning the raw edges here and the top, and pin it. Put a pin in it where you think if you cut it that way using a sample of your binding strip as an overlap, you overlap your strips and do that. Put your some pins in it and pin it. Open it up. Is it too loose? If it's too loose, it will bunch up on you as you go to sew it because you have too much space. Let me show you if it's too tight. If it's too tight and you do this, it will pull and it will not let your bag lay very nice. So again, you can fold in your bag to get it to where you need it to be. So, but if it's too tight, it's gonna pull that. You just want it to lay just right. So play with it and see. Once you have it at the length that you need it, then go ahead and sew that. And then we're gonna press that seam open and then sew it to the rest of the bag. So I am gonna put it under my machine, and I'm just gonna move out my my bag. I'm just gonna fold it over. And I back stitch at the beginning and the end. And before you trim off any excess, just make sure that that fits nicely. And it's nice and snug enough, but not too snug that it pulls it. So I'm going to trim my excess, and then I'm going to press open my seam. I'm just going to finger press it. And then fold it. And then now what you're going to do is finish sewing this to the edge, starting and stopping a little bit of stitches beyond over where you stopped and started. Once you have finished sewing that down, then what you're going to do is take your binding, and again, we're going to fold it to the inside of the bag, covering that stitch line where you attached it, and then you're going to stitch this. Again, I would fold it covering my stitch line, then I would go and stitch in the ditch on the front of the bag, or you can stitch about 1/8 of an inch away. Do that all the way around. You can press this at this point. Once that is attached, then you have a very pretty binding at the top. And the only other thing that I would do is to give my handles, because your handle is attached in with your binding, but I like to give my handles a little more security. So I go and create a box, and then I do an X in that box. Once that is done, your bag is complete, and I will show you what I mean on this other bag. This one I did not put in under the binding, but you could have. But this is what I'm talking about. I stitched it down in a box and then stitched at an X. And that just gives it a little more security. So your bag is more secure. So this is what we just made. A nice bag. Now again, the one we made was a little smaller. Let me tip you up some so you can see. It is pretty bound on top and bottom. Again, I would go back in and finish that boxed corner with a zigzag or a serger, but now you have your bag. And it is, let me move my chair out of the way. Again, I like my straps longer. You may want yours shorter, because I've got a metal board sometimes sticking up. I wanted it large enough that I could still have space for that and put it on my shoulder. And we got a pretty bottom. So go make a bag. If you make a bag, would you please tag me on Instagram if you're on Instagram? If you're not, send me an email. My contact information will be listed below in the show notes, but tag me or send me an email with a picture. I'd love to see it. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to doing many more with you all. But go create, make it your own. If you don't need a bag this large and you want something smaller, customize it and make it your own. And I appreciate, again, you all spending time with me today, and I will see you later. Bye.